Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I need my glasses. If you have my bead bag. Thank you. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Today we're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, starting at Adi Lila, chapter 1, text number 32. Krishna Guru Bhakta Shakti Avatar Prakash Krishna e chai rupe korena bilash. Lord Krishna enjoys by manifesting himself as the spiritual masters, the devotees, the diverse energies, the incarnations, and the plenary portions. They are all 6 in 1. 33. E chai tatvera kari charana bandhan pratame samanye kari mangalachana. I therefore worship the lotus feet of these 6 diversities in the one truth by invoking their benedictions. Text 34. Vande Guru Nisha Bhaktan Isham Ishavatarakan Tat Prakashams Tatach Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Samjakam. Ande. I offer my respectful obeisances. Gurun. Unto the spiritual masters. Isha Bhaktan. Unto the devotees of the Supreme Lord. Isham. Unto the Supreme Lord. Isha Avatarakan. Unto the incarnations of the Supreme Lord. Tat, of the Supreme Lord. Prakashan, unto the manifestations. Cha, and Tat, of the Supreme Lord. Shakti, unto the potencies. Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Samyakam, named. Translation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnations, his plenary portions, his energies, and the primeval Lord himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has composed this Sanskrit verse for the beginning of his book, and now he will explain it in detail. He offers his respectful obeisances to the 6 principles of the Absolute Truth. Gurun is plural in number because anyone who gives spiritual instructions based on the revealed scriptures is accepted as a spiritual master. Although others give help in showing the way to beginners, the guru who first initiates one with the Mahamantra is to be known as the initiator, and the saints who give instructions for progressive advancement in Krishna consciousness are called instructing spiritual masters. The initiating and instructing spiritual masters are equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, although they have different dealings. Their function is to guide the conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami accepted Nityananda Prabhu and the 6 Goswamis in the category of Guru. Isha Bhaktan refers to the devotees of the Lord like Sri Shivas and all other such followers, who are the energy of the Lord and are qualitatively different, non-different from him. Ishavatarakan refers to the Acharyas, like Advaita Prabhu, who is an avatar of the Lord. Tat Prakashan indicates the direct manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nityananda Prabhu, and the initiating spiritual master. Chat Shakti refers to the spiritual energies, Shaktis, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhara, Damodara, and Jagadananda belong to this category of internal energy. The 6 principles are differently manifested, but all equally worshipable. Krishnadas Kaviraj begins by offering those obeisances unto them to teach us the method of worshiping Lord Chaitanya. The external potency of Godhead, called Maya, can never associate with the Lord, just as darkness cannot remain in the presence of light. Yet darkness, being but an illusory and temporary covering of light, has no existence independent of life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Viditam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swa Vadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan Ishan Isha Avatarakan Tat Prakashams Tat Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Samjakam. So, all of you are part of the Shakti, everyone in this room, part of the Shakti of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, all of the living entities are his parts. We're connected to him eternally. Sanitya Nitya Sambandha Prakritisha Parayavasa. What's more, we have an eternal kinship, a relationship with Krishna in a very special way. Each one unique. There are asankhya living entities, unlimited, and each one has a unique relationship with Krishna, although there are categories of relationships. And the spiritual world is full of variety. One of the points of the purport that Srila Prabhupada brings out is that there's variety within the oneness. As we already know, there are categories of energy. Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti pramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdate. Although the Supreme is Advaya Gyan Tattva. It's one thing, everything is included. And it's one, but at the same time, there are the categories of Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Similarly, in the Vishnu Purana, as Lord Chaitanya quoted to Sanatana Goswami, Vishnu Shakti paraprokta shetagyakya tatapura avidya karma sangyangya tritya shaktirishite. There are three main categories of the Supreme Absolute Truth, or Shaktis, Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta. There's the internal spiritual energy, and there's the external potency, Maya, and then there's the living entity who is prone to fall into Maya, or who can cohort with either the internal or external energy. Shetargyakya tatapara. He interacts, does the living entity, with the material or spiritual energy. And when he's in the material energy, it exhibits his tendency for fruitive activity. All this sounds quite technical, but the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is rife, R-A-F-E, with information about the science of God. And of course, there's the tattva and then the feeling that goes along with it. And here we're getting a clear idea of the well thought out science of Krishna consciousness in the literature which is pursuant to the Srimad Bhagavatam. I've already established in the Srimad Bhagavatam Dharma Projita Kaitavo Tra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is a non-cheating process because there's no material motivation. It's meant for pure devotional service to free the living entity finally to the free position of worshiping Krishna with no material motives. And in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, we get an idea of what that looks like when one lives in the freedom of unmotivated service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first word in the verse, Vande, is extremely important. The word also is in the Rig Veda, and it means to offer one's respect. And this is the essence of the culture of Krishna consciousness, one of respecting the Supreme Personality of Godhead and everything in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, everything does have to have its relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Krishna told Brahma, Ritertam yat pratyeta na pratyeta chatmani tad vidyadatmano mayam yatad baso yatatamaha. That everything has a relationship with me, and if you don't see it, you're in Maya. That's what Maya or darkness means, to forget Krishna. So a self-realized soul, or one who's coming out of the darkness, sees everything in relationship to Krishna, and therefore sees everything in its proper place as worshipable, as the energy of the Lord. And particularly the internal energy is worshipable. So here we have a listing of the various members of Lord Chaitanya's entourage, who are described elsewhere as his weapons against Maya. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sangopanga Shraparshadam. Astra means a weapon. So Lord Chaitanya, as a incarnation who comes to deliver the whole world, has two kinds of weapons. One is his beauty. When people see him, they're smitten by him just by seeing his form. And in that regard, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, commenting on the verse, quotes from the Mahabharata. And Suvarna and the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotram, you all know that, probably. Vishnu Sahasranam, yep. South Indians, Smarhari Prabhu does. So it says, Suvarna Varna He Mango Varnanga Shan Shanangiri Sanyasa Kritshama Shanto Nishta Shanti Parayanaha That's this verse from the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotram. Mentions Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Suvarna Varna Hemango. He does this incarnation of God in a golden color. He's smeared with sandalwood pulp, and he takes sannyas. And he's very peaceful. He instills Krishna consciousness in the hearts of the people he meets. So now we have this beginning verse, Vande. I offer my respectful obeisances. And we see, as I mentioned before, how to enact this in the life of a devotee. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came in an Acharya Leela to set the example. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was a young adolescent, was a great scholar. Everyone knows that he defeated Keshava Kashmiri, and that he could tie people in knots with his philosophical expertise, and he did so with great joy to defeat others. Going around with his gang of students up and down the Ganges, he would meet other groups of students who were congregating together, and then he would challenge them to debates, and then he would soundly defeat them and walk off with a swagger with his group of followers. However, when Srila Ishvara Puripad, that is the famous disciple of Madhavendra Puri, came to Navadvip, he stayed at the home of Gopinath Acharya, but when he entered Navadvip, he went first to the residence of Advaita Acharya in disguise. And as he sat down to watch Advaita Acharya worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Advaita Acharya recognized the effulgence of a Vaishnava sannyasi, even though Srila Ishvara Puri was disguised. The other devotees who were nearby could intuit what was happening, and the great singer Mukunda had then sung a song to evoke the emotions of Srila Ishvara Puri. It's a sure way to find out who someone is, to put this transcendental vibration out. For instance, if you're very busy and someone comes to your room and you don't have time to talk for some while, then you can say, let's read Chaitanya Charitamrita from the Adi Lila, that really long purport. And then they might say, I just remembered I have to go. My mother needs a chapati and avocado sandwich. The vibration that Mukunda made melted the heart of Srila Ishvara Puri, who exhibited external ecstasy. And the ruse was over. Advaita Acharya embraced Srila Ishvara Puri, and so all the devotees had a festival in joy that this great Vaishnava sannyasi had come to Navadvip. Now when Srila Ishvara Puri, the celebrated disciple of Madhavendra Puri, came there, he was in search of Nimai Pandit. He had heard about him and his scholarship, but when Nimai Pandit met Srila Ishvara Puri, the swagger was gone. He invited to his home very gently and worshipped him by washing his lotus feet and serving him prasadam. Srila Ishvara Puri stayed there at Navadvip for several months just to take the association of Nimai Pandit. And during that time, a very telling incident took place, and that was that Srila Ishvara Puri had written a book called Krishna Lilamrita. And because Nimai was a great scholar, Srila Ishvara Puri asked him, would you please read through this book and tell me if there's anything wrong, because you know the Sanskrit language better than anybody, and I want to see if there's any discrepancies. Nimai Pandit retorted, how could there be any discrepancy? It's written by a pure Vaishnav. In fact, we've heard this before because previously a devotee had written a book about the Supreme Personality of Godhead in which he said, Nandanandana She, that Nandanandana is my more pran-nath, is my life and soul. And when although the book was imperfectly composed, it had sonnets in it, but sometimes they were ragged. They didn't meet the exact standard for a meter. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the statement, Nandanandana Krishna more pran-nath, he said, if that's in the book, then not only is this author my life and soul, and not only is everybody in the village now my life and soul, but even a dog who lives there is dear to me because of that statement in that book written in that town. In the same mood, he said, how could there be anything wrong with your book? Nonetheless, to enact a pastime with his future spiritual master, he had said the next day after looking over the book, I found one little change that you could make to a verb. You used the word that may not sit in the exact place. And so Srila Ishvara Puri accepted that for the moment and went home, looked at it very carefully, looked at all his Sanskrit grammar books, came back the next day and said, actually, this change, Atmanipodi, the verb that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted him to change, he said, actually it is correct. I've researched it. And Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, who recounts this pastime in the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, says that Nimai was very pleased to be defeated by his devotee. This is mentioned everywhere in the Shastra that when someone becomes an unalloyed devotee of the Lord, then the Lord becomes subordinate to the devotee. Not actually, but out of love. For instance, Stane stita shutigatam tanuvanmano birye prayaso jitta dito pyasitais trilokyam. Brahma has said that for one who gives his life and soul to worshipping the Srimad Bhagavatam with his body, mind, and words, he conquers the Supreme Lord because his heart becomes surcharged with the internal potency, a love for Krishna. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nimai Pandit, of course he defeated everyone, he could defeat anyone at any time, but he allowed himself to be defeated. And he was very pleased to be defeated by this great Vaishnav who was coming from Srila Madhavendra Puri. Soon afterwards, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father who had died, his father died, and he went to Gaya to perform the Shraddha ceremony. It's a place where people go to do that. And it happened to be the residence of Srila Ishvara Puri also. So when he went there, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he met with Srila Ishvara Puri. At that time, he begged him to become his disciple. Srila Ishvara Puri had no illusion about who Nimai Pandit was and deferred to him, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu nonetheless took the humble, submissive role of the disciple, setting an example for everyone about how important, as is mentioned in this verse, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan, offering obeisances to the spiritual masters. He set an example for everyone how to approach Guru. And what's more, after he had accepted initiation there, taking the shelter of his Guru, receiving Harinam, the mantra, initiation, Diksha, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back to his hometown quite changed. Previously he had been haughty and, as I already mentioned, he had delighted in defeating others, but now he was humble and submissive. He went to all the Vaishnavas asking, how can I serve you? What's more, he began to show spiritual emotions externally. In fact, this is something that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions later at Kashi when he meets Prakashananda Saraswati. This Prakashananda Saraswati was, and his group were Mayavadis. And they were criticizing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for chanting and dancing. It seemed like some kind of travesty, spiritual travesty, that how could you sing and dance? Because the Mayavadis are constrained. They hold their senses in. How could you celebrate, dance, and so forth? He thought them to be sentimentalists, and that this was not a real sannyasi. By the arrangement of the internal energy, a Brahmana came and invited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to meet with the Mayavadi sannyasis in Prakashananda, as you remember. And he went there very humbly, did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In fact, when he went in to meet them, he sat down in the most lowly place where people wash their feet. Unthinkable for a exalted personality at that time. And Prakashananda and other leaders objected, no, please, come to this, sit in a higher seat with us. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed his effulgence, and Prakashananda Saraswati reached out his hand, please, please. And in this instant, he got great purification by trying to serve the Lord, by reaching out and bringing him to a proper seat. Swagatam suswagatam. And there Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained the reason that he chanted and danced. And he had received, as he told them, the mantra from his guru. And he said, my spiritual master called me a fool. He said, all these Vedic studies are not for you. You simply chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued. He gave me an instruction from the Shastras, which says Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva 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 gatiranyata. There's no other way in Kali Yuga but chanting 3 times. It's emphasized. And then he explained how after he had received the mantra, he had gone back to his guru, had Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he had inquired from him, did I receive the right mantra? Because he said, the mantra is driving me mad. And when Mahaprabhu made this inquiry from his guru was very pleased, Srila Ishvarapuri. He said, very good. And then he quoted a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which he said is the essence of all the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Evam vrata swapriya nama kirtya jatan rago jita chuta uchar. Asatyato rautiti rauti gayati unmadavam nritati lokabhaya. Just because you poured that, I'm going to drink it because Smarhari is my dear friend. This is how you make advancement in spiritual life. You get water from a dear godbrother. Thank you. You heard the verse, right? Evam vrata swapriyanama kirtya jatanarago, which means that when you take a vow to chant the holy name, then it will become attractive to you. And then your heart will melt, druta chitta. And then you don't care about ordinary customs, can cry, can roll on the floor. You're not concerned with social convention. He quoted that verse to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and said, yes, this is the result of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So, Srila Ishvarapuri was fortunate because he had served his spiritual master. Vande Gurun. The first words of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, serve your spiritual masters. And there's a plurality of gurus. Srila Ishvar Puri is famous for having served Srila Madhavendra Puri, who is said to be the one who first manifested or sprouted the conception of intimacy with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the feelings of separation from Him. In his later days, Madhavendra Puri became invalid, couldn't take care of himself at all, giving opportunity for his disciples to serve him. And Srila Ishvar Puri was so attentive, he gave his full heart and soul to serving Srila Madhavendra Puri, taking care of all his bodily necessities, even as Srila Madhavendra Puri could not move. And because of that, his spiritual master blessed him. He kept also, did Srila Ishvar Puri, the transcendental vibration going for the benefit of his spiritual master. He knew that he wanted to hear the transcendental vibration about Krishna, and his spiritual master recognized the intelligence of his disciple and the sincere desire to serve him. So he blessed him. So much so that our acharyas say Srila Ishvar Puri was qualified to act in this pastime in the capacity of the guru of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who can do that? Whereas the counterexample is Ramachandra Puri, who at the time that Srila Madhavendra Puri was leaving the world had complained about the way his guru was conducting himself. And he said, Guruji, all this crying and the kind of emotional things you're coming up with, not so good. Better to be even-minded and meditate on Brahman. This is so disturbing to Srila Madhavendra Puri that he cast him out of the association of his devotees. And later on, what manifests in the heart of Ramachandra Puri was the propensity to criticize all the Vaishnavas, and it culminated in his criticizing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's important that the bij is the subtle instruction or the fidelity through which we take the instruction of the Guru and enact it. We're responsible not only in the material world for what comes to us, but when we're willfully engaged in Krishna consciousness, tuning our sensitivities in service, finding out what the mood of the spiritual master is, and then working to serve is vitally important. Otherwise, as Prabhupada writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, one can cultivate other moods, other bijas can become manifest. Karma bij, jnana bij, the bijas of criticism and so forth. I'll give one other instance of the importance of following the authority as indicated by Vande Gurun in the pastimes of Srila Ishvar Puri. When he was leaving the world, is everyone okay? Keep going? Just a little bit more. Okay, Srila Ishvar Puri, when leaving the world, had asked Kashishvar and Govinda, who were technically godbrothers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to go and serve his body, take care of him, everything he needs. Whatever he needs, you be there, be his bodyguard, which ended up Kashishvar, and Govinda served him day and night, making sure that everything was scheduled properly, he got whatever he needed, he waited on him. When Govinda, Kashishvar first went on pilgrimage before he came to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but Govinda came straight to where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, offered his obeisances, this was in Puri, and said, Guru Maharaj has sent me to become your servant. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sitting with other devotees, including Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, has said this is a conundrum, because one should not take service from one's godbrothers. And what should I do? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya mentioned the pastime in which, who am I thinking? Who killed Kartavir Arjun? Parashuram, sorry. Parashuram had been in a situation where his mother, Renuka, had gone down to get water for a yajna for their father, or her husband, that is Parashuram's father. And she had lingered and missed the time for the yajna because she saw a Gandharva king who was there with a bunch of consorts, and she kind of looked at that and got waylaid for a moment too long. And when she came back to the ashram, the great sage, Jamadagni, had then recognized, the sages are very subtle. That's where they live, in these subtleties. They can read the hearts of others. He said, oh, you've transgressed. You're unchaste. That was his interpretation. So he said to Parashuram's brothers, he said, kill her. And they said, no, respectfully, but no thanks. And he then told Parashuram, kill her. He said, yes, Father. And he killed her. But he knew that he would get a benediction. So he asked for 2 benedictions. 1, bring her back to life. 2, she won't remember anything, which is what happened. Nonetheless, in the lesson of the story is, and this was brought out by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in the instance of Govinda and Kashishvar, and who would, this would be Maryada Vitikrama, over, this is some kind of transgression of the rules. And he said that did Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the instruction of the spiritual master is extremely strong. One should take that. So, because your guru had said to take service from these godbrothers, then you should abide by it just the way Parashuram did, and everything will be evened out. This is the power of taking the order of the guru, as exhibited by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this pastime. We have a few minutes. I ran the clock down really fast, but I'd like to have a little discussion, especially if you have questions. The verse is about the diversity of the Supreme Personality of God, his various energies. There's the Supreme Lord himself. There's the gurus, who are manifestations of the Supreme Lord, who are here to help conditioned souls come out of darkness. There are the avatars like Sri Advaita Acharya, and others are mentioned in the purport. And then we have the Shaktis like Gadadhar Pandit. And so all of these together are the Panchatattva, and we worship them as a whole in diversity. Please ask some penetrating question that I can answer in the next 7-8 minutes to stimulate the conversation near the end of the class. And it better be good.
When Krishna appears, he appears as Balaram. Lord Chaitanya came with Lord Nityananda, Advaita Acharya. Does the Lord actually need himself in his other manifestations in order to deliver the conditioned souls? I mean, he can't just do it on his own. Why does he? These are all expansions of Vishnu, and Krishna's original guru, then Balaram's original guru, and then Lord Chaitanya, he brought the Panchatattva. So why can't he do it on his own?
There's no question of need, because the will of the Supreme Lord is manifest immediately. However, his position is the supreme enjoyer. And the very beginning, the foundational idea that we have from our studies is Eko Bahushyam. The one becomes many. Why? For his own enjoyment. So what's the use of being a king, for instance, if you don't have any subjects? Can you imagine such a sad sight? Poor king sitting there with no subjects. Or what if you're a famous musician but you don't have any fans? It means when you're an enjoyer, you have to have people who appreciate that you're enjoying and that bring you more enjoyment. So Eko Bahusham, the Lord expands. The one becomes many for his own enjoyment, so there's unlimited. Prabhupada on a morning walk was coming to the end of the walk, about to get in the car to take him back, and he stopped and he surveyed all the devotees who had joined the walk, and he said, you see, if I had been walking alone, there would be no Ananda. The conversation had become animated and blissful, and they were laughing, appreciating Prabhupada's humor and his profound points. And Prabhupada said, you see, if I had been alone, we wouldn't have had Ananda. So to expand his pleasure, he comes in various forms because variety is the mother of enjoyment. What's more, there are different duties that each one of them have. For instance, Advaita Acharya is integral in delivering the conditioned souls in that he calls the Lord to come. He's so compassionate as Mahavishnu because he's connected somewhat to the material creation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead enjoying in the spiritual world. What does he know exactly about the sufferings of the material world? Advaita Acharya, Mahavishnu himself has some connection. He calls the Lord down, as we know. As Advaita Acharya, he's in great anxiety to see the way the living entities are suffering. He plays a role. Lord Nityananda plays a role. He's Akhanda Guru Tattva. He's the first expansion of Krishna with the mood that I'm a servant. And he teaches that to everyone. We see in any devotee community that there's a multiplicity of roles that devotees play in order to help a single devotee advance in devotional service. We all need each other, and we need our various mentors and examples. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is expanded for his own enjoyment and also as a matter of efficiency to complete his mission in a variety of ways. He's the same person, but he manifests himself in various ways to fulfill his desire of delivering the conditioned souls.
Thanks for your simple answer.
At
Maharaj.
the very beginning you mentioned something like freedom and unalloyed devotional service. Could you explain that for us more?
Yes. When I have a vested interest in the material world, then I'm not free. For instance, when Hiranyakashipu was in the clutches of Nrsingadev, the demigods were watching because they wanted their team to win. And why did they want their team to win? Because they wanted their stuff back. Hiranyakashipu took everybody's stuff, and he took everybody's services, and he really messed things up for everybody. So when they were fighting, that is, Nrsingadev and Hiranyakashipu, at a certain point in the battle that was being witnessed by many demigods, Lord Nrsingadev let him go, let Hiranyakashipu free, and then he felt even greater encouragement, vigor to fight. Now Prabhupada explains, when a cat catches a mouse, it doesn't just eat it in one fell swoop. He plays with it for a long time. Okay, you can go ahead. No, you don't. And catches him again. And so he was playing with them, but the demigods were so fearful because they thought that now it's going to be worse because Hiranyakashipu saw us rooting for the enemy, and what if he actually wins? Then we're really finished. Before we were indentured servants, but now we'll be tortured, killed, and so forth. Meanwhile, Prahlad Maharaj had no fear whatsoever. In fact, he mentions this in his prayers that, I'm not afraid of you, my Lord, I'm just afraid of Vishnu Maya. And he was very peaceful. He knew that Nrsingadev was going to win also. And the point is that when I have a vested interest in the material world, then there's always this fear that I'm going to lose, I have something to lose. However, if I give up all vested interests in the material world, and I'm only interested in unalloyed devotional service, there's nothing to lose. It's only devotional service. Narayana paraksarve nakutaschana pibhyati swarga pavarga narakeshu api tulyarta darshina. For a devotee, said Lord Shiva about Chitraketu, Tulya, it's equal whether he's in heaven or hell, because he only wants service. He doesn't care about the material arrangements whatsoever. He just wants to serve. That's the standard set by Prahlad Maharaj and other pure devotees, at which time one is free to move about the universe. We have time for one more. There's 30 seconds more. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, you mentioned that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu received Harinam initiation in Gaya. Is it mentioned in the scripture where exactly he took Harinam initiation from Ishwar Puri in Gaya? And do we know the exact location today?
I don't know. But one thing I can tell you, so you don't feel cheated, is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Kumarhata, which is the hometown of his guru, and he offered obeisances in the courtyard of his guru's house. He collected some dirt from the... Huh? Halisahar. Kalisahar. So he went there to the house of his guru, birthplace. He collected some dust from the ground. He wrapped it in his cloth, and he would take a little bit every day for purification. And this is the essence of this verse, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan, that I'm offering I'm submitting myself to Krishna's authority coming down to me through the Guru Parampara, for which we should be unlimitedly grateful. As Sri Uddhava said to Krishna during their discussions, Naivo payancha pachitim tavayas tavesha brahma yushapi kritam ridda mudas maranta yontar bahis tarubritam ashuban badunban acharya chaitya vapusha swagatim vyanakti. He said, my Lord, if I had thousands of lifetimes of Brahma, I would not be able to repay you. Because Yontar Bahis Tanubritam Ashuban Vadunvan, you appear internally as the Chaitya Guru to instruct me on your own path, and also externally as the Acharya. And as we don't have time for, there are various manifestations of the Guru, that's why it's plural. And Jiva Goswami, commenting on this verse, says that's for the devotee, Krishna is 10 million times more dear to them than their own lives, and that's feeling the presence of the Guru and Krishna's manifestation of the Guru. He said that the devotees feel that even if they had 1,000 entire creation cycles to try to repay it, that they would never be able to repay the debt to Krishna. So this verse we can keep in our hearts and minds, remembering today Srila Ishwara Puri on his divine appearance day. We can remember Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's submission to his Guru to show us the example of how to have success in spiritual life. And we can cultivate this gratitude for the ways that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has expanded himself just to deliver us from the material world. And then we can parlay that feeling into a great exuberance for spreading Krishna consciousness to the poor souls of the world who don't have any idea about Krishna consciousness. They've never heard the holy name, and they've never had Krishna Prasadam. Thank you very much, everybody. All glories to Srila Ishwar Puri, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Gaur Premanande Haribol.
One small question. What was Mukunda sang?
What?
You said that Mukunda he sang one verse for Ishwar Puri, just to identify as a Vaishnava.
It's not mentioned there, but it is mentioned when Mukunda was in with the Vaishnava who was hiding, Pundarik Vidinindi, that he's Aho Bhakiyam Stanakalakutam, about how kind Krishna is because he delivered Putana. So maybe he said that one, I don't know. But some transcendental verse, maybe we can find it in the commentary. Vanchakalpadrushcha kripasandabevacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah Gaur Premanande Haribol.